My name is Dr. Shirley Planton, and welcome to another episode of the U-Turn Turning Point. We welcome you every year to the opportunity to hear from the hearts of our Black men, which is why we host Black Men, Black Love. This year, I will not be your host, but of course I will leave you in great hands, as you will have a powerhouse group of men who are going to talk about all things Black love, religion, health, mental health, you name it. Oftentimes, women say to me, well, why don't we get invited? Because we really want to create a space where the voice of Black men are elevated, the voice of Black men are valued, but more importantly, that they themselves are validated. And on that note, I turn you over to your host for the evening, Mr. Ishmael Joseph.
All right, well, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. Good evening. You give yourselves a round of applause for being here. We do want to welcome you all to U-Turn's 2023 Black Men, Black Love Roundtable Discussion. I just want you to turn to the brother to your left and right and say, man, you look fly, bro. You look fly. You look fly. You look fly. That starts off the cadence. I want to make sure that we know how to love each other, and that's very important. So tonight, again, man, it's really about an open discussion about some of the things that Dr. Shirley has just talked about, our own self-worth, mental health, religion, politics. We're going to keep it as short and brief as we possibly can, but we're going to have an open dialogue. So listen, brothers, some ground rules tonight. Number one, ground rule is openness. Everybody say openness.
Openness.
We know that these topics that we're going to talk about tonight should not be taboo topics among Black men. Should not be. So that's the culture and that's the environment we're hoping to foster tonight. The second ground rule is a non-judgmental approach. And if you can look around, we have all these curtains here. That means you can't see windows, so that means you can't throw no rocks. We love it, right? So this is a rock-free zone, so to speak. When we tackle these issues surrounding the current state of Black men, our mental health, our emotional well-being, sometimes we find that everyone has different values, different belief systems, different standards that govern their lives, and even different backstories. So we want to make sure that we respect every single man's values. Your opinion matters tonight, and so does your backstory. We want to protect that tonight. And of course, another ground rule is to make no assumptions. Make no assumptions. In addition to not judging the viewpoints of others, we must also take care not to make assumptions about the values of another brother, the attitudes, the life experiences, the cultural values, their feelings, right? Our feelings, and of course our faith values. But we want to make sure that every emotion is welcome tonight. And of course, ask questions. I don't propose that anybody here thinks that they're the expert in everything, right? So we want to ask questions because we're all listeners, all right? So I want to kind of break into this conversation by talking a bit about the movie When They See Us. How many of you all have seen that movie, right? Or that documentary? And if you haven't, I'll give you a little history about it. In 2019, this crime drama television miniseries was created and co-written and directed by Ava DuVernay for Netflix. And it was about the 1989 Central Park jogger case, and it explored the lives and the families of the 5 Black and Latino male suspects who were falsely accused, then prosecuted on charges related to the rape and assault of a white woman in Central Park, New York City. Now, I went through a lot of these reviews and in preparation for our time today, but there was one particular review that stuck out to me. Now, this review was anonymous. This person wrote this review, and this is what the reviewer said. The reviewer said that this documentary was jaw-dropping. Listen to the adjectives: sickening, eye-opening, disgraceful, embarrassing, and makes you really think how this could have happened. So while preparing for our discussion today, the verbiage that was used in that review, it replayed over and over in my head. And the reason why, because as much as that movie exposed the reality of the wrongful accusations of these Black and Hispanic young men, the wrongful incarcerations, and of course our faulty criminal justice system, we all see what is happening on a granular level. We just experienced the national case that we see now with Tyre Nichols. We see it. Now we also experienced what happened to Nipsey Hussle. And if you didn't know, as of yesterday, the man who was convicted, Eric Holder, he was convicted of 60 years to life in prison, right? On a national level. But let's forget about the national level. Let's look at the local level. We talk about Northwest Miami-Dade neighborhood where there was a young man and a teenage boy that was killed and shot dead right in the beginning of this month. And then just yesterday in Opa-locka, a 19-year-old young man shot his 14-year-old sister over an argument. So we're seeing the landscape of what's happening. So it begs me to question not when they see us, but rather when will we see us? When will we see us? And Thurgood Marshall has a quote. He says, when we recognize the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. So in comes my first question, and this is an open discussion. When we first think of the phrase black on black crime, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind and why? Don't think too hard, don't think too long. Black on black crime, what's the first thoughts that come to your mind and why? As we open up our discussion today. Anyone's open to it.
The first thing that came to my mind was proximity. Because you're gonna commit crimes to people that you're closest to.
Yeah.
But then the second thing that came to my mind when it comes to black on black is just the extremeness of those crimes compared to other communities. You know, because you talk about gangs, you talk about, you know, gun violence, you're talking about, you know, especially coming from Miami, you know, you can have a 2-year-old birthday party and a drive-by to catch a stray bullet. And these are real stories that has happened to young people all the time in our community. You know, there's certain streets you can't walk. You know, you can't walk on, you know, we just talked about that earlier. You know, so that's the difference, you know, that separates it from the proximity conversation is just the extremeness of how, you know, those that are getting hurt and the type of crimes that are being committed. And that is organized too, like you have gangs, people coming together to hurt one another.
Also, it's easier to love, but our music glorifies killing one another.
You about to go in there, brother.
And until we get to that, I think we're not gonna, and the other argument is there's as many love songs, but you put one rotten banana with 15 other good bananas, it's gonna affect that. The negative is gonna take over the positive every day. So that's one of the things that truly bothers me, whereas we're all talking about this, but some of the music we listen to, and we don't even realize it, at times the lyric comes out of our mouth and we're glorifying killing one another, we're glorifying owning a gun. There's so many roots to this problem. And I think the music that they're selling to us is part of the problem.
I just wanted to make one quick point. I think about the music, you know, my wife always criticizes me for what I'm watching or what I'm listening to. Oh, it's bad for your spirit. You know, I'm like, well, I sleep pretty good. You know, but I think, you know, music in many ways shifted from reporting to a glorification, right, and to a celebration. So I think we have to decipher. You know, it's hard to critique people for reporting on what they see and not critique those who aren't contributing to that community, causing them to report on these things. And I want to say I get your point, and it's well made. And I just want to say to Kerbin's one thing about the Tyree thing, you know, yes, there were 5 black officers that violently killed a black man, and for many people, they were arrested in maybe within 14 days? They were convicted and fired within 14 days. I think some of it, when white officers are involved, that almost never happens. Definitely not at that speed.
Right.
And a lot of black people will say, what we're looking for is accountability. What we're looking for is justice. So there wasn't as wide a scream, not because people weren't mad and upset and angry, but because some of what they were looking for that they've never seen happen. Now, I think that happened because there were black officers. That's my personal opinion. But black people in general want accountability. And historically, we've seen that when it's a white officer committing an act, it could take 2 years, it could take 3 years. Sometimes it doesn't happen. A lot of
At
times it
all,
doesn't
right.
happen at all.
Right.
You know, so I just think that's important. And to be honest, when black people kill black people, they generally get arrested, right? That's not to say that the conviction rate is 90% or whatever, but they generally get arrested. So, it's hard to think about that because we're not saying we don't care, but we're saying when it's each other, we see the action. It's swift. It happens. It's not fair because we're still dying, but something's happening. So, I just wanted to say that.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait, just,
Response.
I'm glad you sleep well at night, but little Johnny, that's 8 years old, he hears that music and is constantly
That's a
singing
good
it.
point.
And then Mr. Felix says, I need you to sit down and be quiet. He's gonna turn around and give me that look as if he wants to do something about it because that's what he's listening to. And I think that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
You're probably well rooted. You received everything. Our kids, they're growing up now without fathers, frustrated mothers, and no one really doing anything about it until they get in the classroom, and then now you gotta fight with them. As a teacher, you're being disrespected by little, and you gotta remember black love. So you gotta still find a way to love them. And I could go on, but
Yeah.
Yeah, point.
So
Yeah, real quick.
sorry.
Yeah. So the first thing I thought about was proximity as well, but then also individuals and individualism. I think being 27 now, I think one thing that we don't talk about is my generation has literally watched a lot of the systems that are supposed to be supporting people in this country and all of that fall apart. Or, they were never really intended to work for us in the first place, but that has become clearer within our generation than we've ever really seen before. Because gun violence has been an issue in black communities for a good while now, but I think the trend that we're noticing where people are just so willing to pick up a gun and take a life has to do with us watching the breakdown in those systems, but unfortunately, rather than like leaning into community and into us and how we're gonna build solutions among us, it's like, okay, I need to make it, or I need to find a way to get to this next point by myself. Everybody's trying to start their own businesses, do their own thing. We're all looking to make it out as individuals. And I think that when we start moving like that, then we don't see each other as a people, we see each other as other individuals. And it's just so much easier to pick up a gun and take a life in that instance. And I think just in general, even to that point about the music, right? Like, where, more so than the music itself, why do young kids relate? Like, why are young kids relating to that music? What's in it that's actually causing kids, okay, I want to listen to this. I relate to what they're talking about, even if that person that's rapping that music didn't live that lifestyle, What about it is connecting people to that? And I think for so long we've told each other that we're supposed to be our brother's keepers simply because we're black and we live close to each other and we're in proximity to each other. But what's underneath all of that, Like, what are like the actual shared values? What are the other parts of our like shared identity that are gonna cause us to see each other as community instead of just these individuals that we're living next to?
But that's gone. And see, that's the problem, is because we don't have shared values, right? Every time
We gotta talk about it.
every time I say I'm Nigerian, it sets off something in anyone else. And if I talk to someone who will say that they're Black American, they will say that they don't have a lineage. So therefore, my shared values, which should be everyone's shared values, is different, right? And so therefore, we don't have shared values. Then we go on to the point where you say, why is this music relatable? Because a lot of people talk about back in the day when we made songs, they had a real meaning. There weren't the songs that we have today. Even when I was younger, we might have had, and I'm aging myself, we had NWA and things like that. But we listened to that, but we never replicated it. And so today, when you say people who can't relate, they will not relate to that. But if you go to a concert, you're not seeing us.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So therefore, we're not the ones fueling the machine. We're not even executive producing the machine. We're not overseeing the machine. We're actually just the performer within the machine. And so you start to look at all of those different factors just on music, since that was something that was brought up, you start to see that people will hear something that's got a nice beat. Okay, he says a bunch of things I don't agree with, and I'm saying he for a reason, but yet it's still playing in my car. I made a playlist to it. I shared this playlist with everybody. I shared this playlist with a black woman. She's singing the song harder than I was singing. So we have, it's gone to a point where, oh, she really likes this song? Oh, well, this must be, in your head you start to think, you say, even though we all know this is not, no matter what it is, I would never tell my mom any of these songs, right? But that's the case.
So let's take a shift, because we're talking about value systems, right? So my question becomes, how do we measure the value of ourselves and the value of another black man? How do we measure that? Is that something that's even measurable? Like, let's have a conversation about that. Like, how do we measure that?
Well, let me just say, and this kind of ties in what everybody was saying. The reason why we valued each other more is because culturally, the value of black people was being promoted in the black community. We were proud to be black because black people were being oppressed. So the fact we were being oppressed, it naturally brought us together, right? This generation didn't live that. They may read about it, but they don't have the same drive to be my brother's keeper, because we're not all kind of like in that space anymore where we're being oppressed as a group, and it's so evident to where even the young people want to go out and fight against it. You know what I mean? They do in small pockets, but it's not like a national movement, you know what I mean? And so to make a song where I want to glorify killing another black person, it doesn't bother me, because I don't see how me and this black person even connect. I don't even see how we relate. That's just an individual, right? It's an individual, because there's nothing that that we're caring about collectively, unless somebody from the outside come in and do something to us, being a white officer or something like that. Now, you know, we have something in common, but the reality is we've always had something in common. We just forgot about it, you know? So if we get back to our roots, I would say, get back to where we were truly valuing community, we were truly valuing family, and we realized that we were forced to come here, you know, and build this country, and just to be oppressed in it. If that reality becomes more relevant and DeSantis stop trying to stop us from learning about it, then I think that will bring us to have more value for one another, even at a young age. Yeah.
If you look at other cultures, right? Like, look at Hispanic cultures, look at white, look at Jewish. One person from Cuba makes it over here, everybody coming, and they gon', okay, you could plumb, you electrician, you woodworking, whatever, they gonna do something, they gonna form something, and they're gonna raise everybody up at the same time and help each other. And that's across like the Asian community, and you see it. You see these built up communities, whereas in the black community, you know, Pops, yeah, he might open a store in the corner. What's happening? He's getting robbed every 3 days, because dudes in the neighborhood are like, oh, he got money, so let's get that. You know, let's get this ninja. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's get him. Whereas they're not trying to say, how can we help him? You know, how can we, like, what else can we put on this block? You know, what else do we need in our neighborhood that can, you know, help us like rise above? You know, it's that same like the crab that you always keep talking about, right? It's like these other cultures, you know, they'll do it. Okay, you're gonna start a business, or I'm gonna help you, and then I'm gonna start one. You're gonna help me, that kind of thing, to build up. So it's not necessarily like everybody's individualism. It's specifically like our culture has that ingrained, where it's like if somebody else is getting ahead, you know, it's like, well, I want to get what he got. So I'm not gonna work for it. I'm just gonna take it. Like, you know, I mean, I grew up, you know, not to out my parents, but you know, I grew up in suburban neighborhoods, and you know, when I was able to become, you know, successful enough to leave, you know, I got called a sellout by my boys. They used to hang out with. It's like, look, man, I'm not coming through. I got a nice whip. You know, I'm not trying to come to the neighborhood no more. You know what I'm saying? Because
Facts.
I know what's gonna happen. So it's like, hey, I got to do what's best, you know, for me to establish myself and try to, you know, to bring myself out of it. And granted, you know, I want to help y'all, but it's like, at the same time, you can't really, not to say that it's a lost cause, but it's like, how are you gonna get past that? Okay, this brother made it. How can you help me make it, instead of, well, you made it, so I'm gonna get what you got. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing.
I don't have a direct comment attached to what he said, but I've been thinking about the conversation as a whole and thinking about stringing together the question about black on black crime and then moving on to value. And does black people commit crimes against black people? Yes. Is there such thing as black on black crime as people use it in the political sense? Obviously not, because people commit crimes where they live. But then also, I want to start to talk about, you know, what are some of the causes for that crime? What are the conditions that's creating crime? And one of the obvious answers is poverty.
Yeah.
But there's a school of thought that says it's not necessarily poverty that creates crime, it's relative poverty. So if you have a city with 100 people and 100 people are poor, there'll be low crime. But if you have a city with 50 people and 50 people, if you have a city with 100 people and 50 people are poor and 50 people are rich, then there'll be high crime. Because part of the reason that crime is festering is because they see what someone else has.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason why, well, national trends for crime, violent crime, has gone down significantly over the past 30, 40 years. But I think part of the reason why there is a lot of crime is because of that relative poverty idea, but also I think it's coupled because of social media, what we see other people have. So now it's not, I'm driving past a bad neighborhood to get to, I'm driving past a good neighborhood to get to a bad neighborhood, then we commit a crime. It's, you see all the good neighborhoods on your phone, you see everything immediately on your phone. So I think the idea of relative poverty is something that's not spoken about enough. Now there's economic mobility. Like, black people, we need to know how to get to the top, how to get in a position where we are escaping from poverty. Because I firmly believe that in order to really get to where we want to go, we have to simultaneously run away from something and run towards something. I think right now, we're mostly trying to run away from the bad,
Right.
but we don't have anything to run toward.
Right.
We don't have this shared vision or shared goal or shared idea of what to run toward exactly. And so when it comes to valuing each other, yes, there is the idea of individualism in America, and I think people should understand the importance of taking responsibility and having, essentially being resourceful with what you have in order to reach the top. At the same time, we also have to look at each other and value what each other bring to the table.
Right.
So if, you know, we would more likely value a white person's business over our own business. If someone is selling, let's say, a book or a product or a shirt,
Right.
there's a chance that we're not going to buy that from someone who looks like us. We'll buy it from someone who doesn't look like us.
But how much of that is culture, and how much of that is what we're being indoctrinated within media and music?
But that's another point as well. Just how you were saying, okay, other cultures, and this just you were saying federal programs, right? You can see it like it is clear as day now, right? If everybody goes in anywhere in Wynwood or anything like that, what do you see everywhere? You see a plant that people were selling who look like us, and then in a certain time frame, they were jailed. Do you understand that there are farms now? Like the things that are, even when you say what to run to, because what can you run to? Think about it from a standpoint, it's like, okay, if I make it out, I can't go back. And then if I make it too much, then someone else, I have to worry about different things. And also too, if I get too good at what I'm doing, or they have not figured out a way to make profit off it, they will put me in jail for years. And while I'm behind bars, I have to watch every other person on anywhere make tons of money. Do we understand a whole state was bankrupt and then they started selling and now they're flourishing? Like, so the problems that we're talking about now, we're starting to get to actual root causes, because I'm at a point in my life where I'm tired of hearing about, a lot of things. I'm getting to the actual, what's the problem? Hey, if this, for instance, we were there and they were playing pool, right? Okay, the pool stick was broke. In my head, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna buy pool sticks. That fixes it. Because at the end of the day, if we wait, if I can leave here and come back in 2 months, they'll still have the same pool sticks. But I'm gonna be upset because I'm gonna say someone here was supposed to fix that when I have the ability to fix it. So while we are having great conversation, I definitely want us to get to a point where we start diving at the root causes of how do we actually change gun violence, or how do we actually change poverty, even though when I say this, these are huge topics.
Yeah.
And so if we start within ourselves and then navigate spaces and not be individuals, but say, hey, we all are gonna come to, I use me for example. I do something called STEM Saturdays, we help kids. Everybody here's gonna come to STEM Saturdays. Okay, so then when you have barbershop speaks, everybody's gonna go to the barbershop, so we do that. And then anybody else, because that's when we start to see, they will see all of us somewhere versus it's just me all the time.
Right.
I think I want to say something quickly. I think that's a really good point that you said at the beginning, where where do we all have to run to, and the fear of if I make it out, then people will be jealous of me, or so. I think the way to, or it's not an easy solution, but we have to have the mentality that we're lifting as we're climbing. Where I think if you're like, I'm gonna make it out the mud on my own and I won't tell anybody what I'm doing until I'm finally out, then justifiably so, you should be afraid. But if you are, as you are crawling up the ladder of success, if you will, if you're helping other people with you, then I think it makes it much easier for the people around you to not have that jealousy, because now you'll be like, look at LeBron James, for example, how he brought all of his teammates, how he brought all of his friends from high school, and now all of them are, wealthy, all of them are successful. And so we have to have that same LeBron James, the greatest basketball player of all time.
Whoa.
We have to have
derail this whole thing. Monkey wrench, bro. Professor, we were right with you. We was basketball. We was shredding along with you. No. We was rolling, Professor.
If we in open spaces, we talk about basketball.
Nah, you in detention, Professor.
Not a collective. We talking about basketball. You said greatest basketball.
But I'm saying,
flag on the play, Professor. Flag on the play.
But I'm saying we have to have that LeBron mentality that we're going to lift as we climb. And honestly, a lot of that responsibility is on us. Well, especially for the much younger people, like myself, like these gentlemen here. Like as we are climbing the ladder, we have to climb with others.
So let me ask you a question.
One thing.
I know. You don't have much time, brother. So forward.
I got 1 sentence.
Make it short, brothers.
I got 1 sentence.
Go ahead.
My baseline is you can't outrun your skin tone.
Say that. Wait, time out. Wait, Gil, stop.
Come on.
Say that again. For the people in the back. You gotta say that again, brother.
I feel that.
My baseline is you cannot outrun your skin tone. So this concept that we're running to something or towards something, it doesn't matter. You cannot outrun your skin tone. And if that is the baseline that we operate on, then there's a connection. Because we don't have a base. You gotta have a base before you can connect, before you can even see humanity. You gotta have a base. So, success is great and it's wonderful, but it doesn't matter, because if you live in Coral Gables, or if you live over town, or if you grew up in Scott's or Pork and Beans, it doesn't matter. If you're in a Honda Civic, you could get killed just as the same if you're in Infiniti, S5, whatever it is. You can't outrun your skin tone. And we keep trying to outrun our skin tone. If something's not clicking, we don't get that. Well, I'm gonna just make $2 million a year. I'm gonna make $20 million. I'm getting, how many athletes die? I mean, so I'm sorry, that was my own. You cannot outrun your skin tone. But we gotta stop pretending like we can.
So wait.
So
1, 2. All right. We talked about one of the best basketball players. One. But not only he had love for his brothers, but there had to be trust coming from both ends.
Yeah,
And
that's
when
very
I
true.
say that, yesterday I experienced something that was I wanted to close my door and cry. Dealing with the parent that has a real issue at home in regards to the student himself. And kid came up to me and says, I can't go on the field trip because I don't have the clothes. No problem. I told him, tell your dad, sign the field trip form. You'll have the clothes the day of the field trip. You'll change and show up on the day of the field trip. My dad said, I'm not going. Pick up the phone. Father would not even take a minute to talk to me. For me to explain to him that it's not that I feel that he deserves to go on the field trip. It's that I feel that going on the field trip is going to help us to get where we're trying to get. But the father, borderline, cursed me out. And trust, there's none. And that I see in the classroom all the time. You have parents that are not trusting their teachers. You have teachers trying their hardest, but there's no relationship between parents and teachers. So the child knows, yeah, my parents are gonna curse him out anyway, so I can do whatever, because nothing is gonna happen. And the harder you try, if you don't have someone that trusts that you have great intentions, it's gonna be difficult. So like going back to LeBron, he loved and he trusted, and also his brothers and his circle trusted him to know that he wasn't only trying to use them. And we always think that, hey, somebody's gonna try to use us or take advantage of us.
Leah Curvins?
For them, to respond to Mr. Noel, it's a great mentality that LeBron has. But reality of things is we can't bring everyone with us.
No, of course not.
You feel me? And that you have to bring something to the table. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you may have to cut that finger to save the hand. If your dog not good for you, you can't bring him to the top with you. I have many friends, from high school, from middle school, and even before that. And honestly is the path that I'm on now, certain places I just can't bring them with me. Certain events I'm doing, they just can't be there. And they invite me to many events, many parties, many activities, and I have mad love for them, but I just can't go to that. I don't know what's gonna happen. I have big goals and aspirations that I want to achieve one day. So it's not that I don't have love for them, it's that I love myself and I love my family. So I can't put myself in those predicaments.
So you find yourself, you saying that you love yourself more.
It's not that I love myself more, it's that I love my family. It's the love that I have for my mother and the love that I have for the ones that are coming after me. Because I'm very young, I'm only 21 years old. But I find myself always thinking about the future, always thinking about the kids, always thinking about the legacy that I want to leave behind. And honestly, I can't leave any type of legacy behind. I can't be on the news headline. I don't want to be on there for any bad reasons. And I honestly do not want to make my mother cry. So I can't be in those predicaments. And it's not that I don't love my friends. I have access. That's my dog right here. He knows I would give him the clothes on my back if I could.
Why you ain't give him that jacket though?
Yeah, you want it? If you would not give it to him right now. But honestly, I have mad love for my friends.
Yeah.
Come on, Daddy, come on. But ask him. I always talk about my future and my parents. Everything I do, sadly, kids work for their parents to make them happy.
So let me ask this question to Keon. As a student, and you guys are both students at a local university. Do you share that same sentiment? Like, how safe do you feel as a black student in our culture today when we're seeing what's happening among us as black men?
I think the culture today, I think we have to go back to a sense of what love is in the household. Because I think in the society today, we don't truly know what love is. That starts in the household. And as a black man in today's society, I'll be honest, I feel safe around those like this man right here. Because this is a man of God right here. That's honesty right there. Because he stayed in that Bible. But that's the thing, we have to teach what that truth is, that truth of life. We're focused on what's going on right now, that's killing us right now. We have to focus on what's long term. You know what I mean? So what we have to focus on is what true love is and how we get to that. So I think.
Les?
I kind of lost my train of thought. He helped me get there with going back to values. I think the family values have been devalued over time. And I think we're seeing a bell curve. And what he was saying with consistency, we don't have that, and that's why sometimes you see peaks of fatherhood being important in the Black community, and then fatherhood is stepped on. And what he was saying with the root cause, along with, I think one of you guys talking about trust. Trust is how you start with it. You know, thanks to you, I'm starting to read this book, Atomic Habits.
James Clear.
You start with 1%. So I think you starting with the root cause, just a little bit, and then you'll get better. I think the start is trust. If you trust your family, show love in your family, then we'll start valuing family a little bit more, and then we can start valuing one another, the Black community, a bit more.
So let me go ahead.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
So just not to counter that at all, but what I think, I'm gonna use me for example, right? I'm raised a certain way. I love my family and things like that, and I came up where I did a lot on my own. But then you get to a point where you treat family a certain way, and then something happens. And for someone who wasn't open ever, you open yourself up, and now you go back into a deeper door. And so, as you're saying, that trust is too, but also you're reading Atomic Habits. A lot of this too starts to come from what type of greater version are we trying to be, right? Because there was a lot of stuff that said, okay, Brandon, you could either keep going down this path, or you could go this path, or you go this path. And some of that had to start saying, no, it's not gonna come from reading this book or seeing someone make it out of a predicament. It's me getting into a dark room and saying, okay, what is the actual scars that I have? What's my own root cause? And then going from there and trying to change that. Because as you're saying, that trust value, people are gonna break that, but that doesn't mean you stop trusting them. That means, hey, okay, I gotta help them a different way, or I gotta help them from afar. Maybe I give it to you to give to them. They don't know it's coming from me because they have a great relationship with you. As long as they're still taken care of at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? Right. So,
go ahead.
I just wanted to connect the systems, right? Because I think that's like
you gotta say that louder.
Yeah, we gotta connect the systems because there's a disconnect in all the different systems that affect our lives. Like everybody here in their respective fields represent a system, right? And you can't get everything you need as a human being from one system because life don't stop at that place. You gotta leave your house, that's the family system, right? Then you gotta go to school, that's the educational system. Then from school, between school and your house, you bumping something in your ears, that's the entertainment system, right? And then you gotta deal with the finances to take care of yourself. That's the economics, financial system. You know what I'm saying? Then you got to deal with police brutality, just being a Black man in the street. You know what I'm saying? That's the, police system. Then you got to figure out how politics work and see how that's going to affect your life. So what I'm saying is that all these systems have to communicate, collaborate, and get on the same page to effectively raise up a child.
So let me ask you this question, because you raised an interesting point. I love how you were able to kind of categorize the systems that affect us each and every day. Systemic change takes
centuries.
Everything. It takes all of us. Like it takes all of what we have yet to see that we have. I'm gonna be transparent and honest, right? So how do we start the process of infecting change in these systems that we are all integrated in our own separate spaces as Black men?
We come up with one common goal. Not 5, not 10, not 15. One thing that we all agree on.
Which is what?
We want to see our youth succeed. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. You know what I'm saying? Because if we try to base it on, we base it on politics, or we base it on, Democrat versus Republican, or we base it on, I feel this should be taught in the school system, that shouldn't be, it's going to be too much nuances. But if we can come together on one common goal, right? I give you a perfect example. In the organization I'm a part of, Circle of Brotherhood, right? We come from different walks of life as Black men. You know, we say from the streets to the suites, right? That means everybody's on different economical level. There's also different religions, some Muslims, some Christians, some atheists, some don't know what they want to believe, you know what I'm saying? But we have come together to agree on one thing. We want to improve our community as black people. And that's the glue that keeps us going strong for so many years. We don't let our differences divide us.
Yeah.
We come together on what we agree on. So if all those systems can come together on one thing that we can agree on, which is helping our youth succeed, then all we have to do now is make sure in each of those systems we're doing something that is going to speak to that.
Okay.
And then we connect each other to that, including the church.
Yeah.
The church is a system.
Yeah.
So all of that has to be intertwined. You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah,
what we're gonna wrap up.
I agree. So when it comes, I know this conversation is about like gun violence and everything. Exactly right. We have to just figure out what is our common goal. What are we trying to do? Individually, we have to know ourselves. We have to know our own vision. But also collectively, we have to know, okay, what connects me to you? What connects me to you? What connects me to you? How can I support you? How can you support me? And keep that going. I think that's important because systemically, like, it's too much to handle, at one time. But we are so powerful. We have to, like, okay, we see how powerful we are in a lot of different instances. You look at the whole Popeyes, chicken sandwich situation. We had a lot of money that we was pouring into that one institution, right?
To a chicken sandwich.
Listen, man, you got the shoes on, right? The Jordan, like, we are powerful if we could come together and say, you know what, we're gonna support this young man's program. We're gonna support this campaign that your organization is having. We can come together and we can make change. And the thing that we have to understand, though, is that they see that we can do that, and they try to separate us and have us fight.
Well, yes, exactly. So kind of piggyback on that, and what my man was saying earlier about it's not just the cultures that help that we got, right? You got to go way back to when they started stacking the deck against black people because they didn't want us to come up to their level.
Right.
Once we became free, they didn't want that competition. They didn't want us to be able to do that stuff. So they started, the redlining and the taking money out of our schools and basically doing everything they can to keep that thumb on the scale to make it that much harder for us to try to get past that, which not saying that you can't, because obviously, many of us here are successful, right? But that same angle just puts those obstacles in place. So like the whole thing with, crack cocaine, getting 3 times the sentence of, dust or powder coat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
White people do that stuff like this going out of style, but you get caught with like one rock, 20 years in jail, whereas he goes to rehab for 18 months and he's back on he's out. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that takes what? That takes a father out. So you talk about families, right? So now how's the family is broken because the dad happened to he was struggling. Somebody say, hey man, smoke this will make you feel better. He get caught with it, boom, 20 years gone. So now, the kids in that whole family is now disrupted. So now they raised without a father. So then, of course, what's the role model that they have? None. So then they end up, it just keeps repeating the thing. Then you have another father's home, another father's home, another father's home.
Yeah.
The kids, are getting that lesson at home. There's no big mama going upside their head, telling them, don't do this, don't do that, do that. I mean, when I was younger, I grew up in some rough neighborhoods. One of the things when I was in elementary schools, I wanted an MCM outfit. I thought that was the dopest outfit I ever saw. You know what? But guess what? The dudes that was there, they was like, hey man, we're gonna do something. Get money, right? And couldn't afford it. So they was like, hey man, we're gonna do something. We're gonna get this money. We're breaking into the car, stealing radios, doing whatever.
Yeah.
And they was rocking it. I was like, I'm out. I made some excuse because first of all, I don't want to ruin my future by getting a record in elementary school. And 2, if I come up with an MCM outfit, my mom was gonna just wear me out. Like, where this came from? How you got this? So you know what I mean? So it's like I could have made that decision, that path, right? But because I had a strong, family, that because all my, everybody in the family, if I did something wrong, I'd hear it from my parents, my aunts, everybody was like, you got the whole family coming at you like, don't do that, don't do that. So that, the lack of that now means, these people are like, hey man, let's go do this. All right, man, yeah, let's do it. Because, again, that economics we was talking about, you want to be successful, but it's like they don't want to do it the right way.
Right.
I participated in Big Brothers Big Sisters for a couple of years, and all these, these dudes that they were sending these kids, I'm telling them, and it was through a work program on my job, right? So they're coming into a corporate building, right? Or coming into office, sitting at my desk. while we're, trying to show them, okay, this is the way, right? This is how you become successful. And they were like, and none of them were trying to hear that because they're like, they didn't want to go through all that and work their way up and do this and do that.
I want to be an
get that
influencer.
level.
I want to be you.
They want to, they want that, they want that quick money. It's like, well, I'm gonna do that. I can get a couple bricks and I'm gonna have a better car than what you got. Like you ain't got nothing. You got a little, whatever. I'm gonna be rolling in a big body or something. So it's like it's that same mentality that just keeps
And we see it all
dragging
the
it
time.
down like an anchor.
Yeah.
I want to get back to something that James had said earlier about the systems really like influencing culture or shaping culture. Because one thing I think that you said earlier is that we don't talk about, we don't have a lot of those same values, or we don't talk about these same things in community. But growing up in this time, I feel like we still talk about all of those same things. Like I grew up during all the Black History Months, all the, Juneteenths and all of that. Like we still do all of those things. Those things haven't left the culture. But when my reality is so different, and when like the ways that we're now making money and the opportunities that are available to me are so different, that is only going to go so far. So I do think that we need to start getting more specific as a people about what we're actually going to start organizing around. And we can go into the politics of all of it. That's a whole different conversation. But I think like one of the clearest ways I've heard it painted by Bell Hooks, she calls them like systems of dominations or cultures of dominations, right? Like all of these different things we see, capitalism, patriarchy, all these different isms are all rooted in like a philosophy of domination. Like I have to be competing against others, I have to dominate somebody else in order to sustain myself. I have to accumulate all the power and resources for myself, hold them so that, I'm straight, And so until we're ready to like start addressing that in a real way in our community, then, I just see like the same ball spinning constantly,
So let me ask this question. I'm gonna come to you, Keon, in a second. I'm hearing a common thread in terms of us having or wanting or desiring as Black men to have common values or a baseline or a foundation of a particular goal that we want to move towards. And as you said, Poppy, you've articulated within all these systems, right? And then I, when we counter that, we think of in terms of the mental toll that is taken upon us as men in our respective spaces to cause influence and change in our spaces so we can start seeing that progress. So my question to you all gentlemen today, and as we're turning the corner here, like the preachers say, right. How does the lack of mental health services play into the devolution of our love towards one another as Black men? Or the idea that we can be better? Because Brandon, you raised a very interesting point. You said, I saw something, I saw my future self, right? And it was something that I had a vision and I wanted to work towards that. And unfortunately in the school systems, our young Black men don't see what that self looks like 30 days from now. Not 5 years, not 10 years, 30 days. So the mental health services that we're not seeing or the lack thereof, how does that play into the devolution of our love towards one another as Black men, or the idea that we can be better?
We have to openly have a conversation about speaking to each other about love is not wrong.
So, come on, you gotta
Speaking
say that
to each other about actually showing up for each other is not wrong.
Yeah.
I think it was Charlemagne the God, he just talked about how having conversation about being a faithful Black man and how better his life became. We don't have that conversation, right? We also don't have an open conversation about, like when I first started therapy, I was going to therapy because I was an entrepreneur and I felt nobody else could relate to what I was going through. Even though every time I talk to another entrepreneur, we're like, man, you gotta
this ain't no different.
But then I kept going back. And then until like I had some issues and I started talking to her about them and she was like, this is where we should have started. We need to unpack like the real layers versus your entrepreneurial problems. Yeah, I can kind of help you because she's an entrepreneur, but then maybe not. But it's more about like going back to like your childhood, why you don't like this, or why you, Jay-Z said it, how we're taught If you look at somebody in their eye, that's a sign of respect.
Right.
But if I walk down the street and I look at you, you're like, why are you looking at me?
Right.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. You see me? So, and because he said it, because it's like you actually see me.
Yeah.
And so it's some of those
That's true.
things that we have to reshape in our own kids, right? How I was raised, and this is like you said, you feel LeBron is the greatest basketball player ever. I feel like my dad is the greatest ever, right? And I'm pretty sure anybody else may feel that about them. But I didn't have a conversation about love with my father until I was 30. And so I made sure, like, when I see my daughter, it's like, I don't even know how I go into this mode because I didn't have it, but I'm gonna overdo it, right? And so that's why I think that sometimes we have to look at those situations and say, how do we actually change those conversations? Because that's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take us standing up and saying, hey, that's wrong, and this is the actual right way. Or, hey, maybe you don't need to go to therapy, but talk to somebody that you trust. Because every time we say therapy, somebody feels this, right?
Yeah.
You can get, I have my best friend Kobe. I talk to Kobe about, there's not one, if we have a conversation openly, I may omit. Okay, but Kobe, no omission. And so you gotta have a safe space, whether that's a therapist, somebody in the church, close friend, whatever that is, you gotta have that safe space. And we need it more than ever now because it's to a point where if we don't have it, we're gonna think all kinds of ideas and not understand that, man, you need to calm down and have a different opinion.
James, I was waiting for you, brother.
Yeah, I'm interested in therapy because you said prior you were like, I had to like go into a dark corner within myself. I'm like, oh shit, you should have that. You're like, no, I had a therapist. You know what I mean? Like no transformation happens as an individual.
Right.
But I think there's two things that come up, and I'm thinking about the original conversation about music, and you're like, I sleep well at night. Right. It's like the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like what I'm hearing from you is like, where you've gotten to a place where you are actually self-actualizing who you want to be.
Right.
And as you know, in schools, like the number one reason why people are not self-actualizing because their basic needs are not being met.
Absolutely.
Basic needs not being met over generations.
Absolutely.
So like the music shit for me, I'm like, well, shit. If you have the capacity to self-actualize, then I'm like, yeah, this shit is just fun for me. Like this doesn't actually reflect. You know what I mean? But I think I think it goes back to two things. As an individual, we have to be committed to self-actualizing, right? Actually find our potential. But in terms of systems, I think it's actually real simple to have a nuanced political project. It's like, what are the things that require people to self-actualize? Everybody should have stable housing.
Yeah.
Everybody should have access to healthcare and a therapist. Everybody should have quality education, and everybody should feel like they have community space where they can build relationships. And I think if we fight for those things, which is all economic, that then gets framed as political, we will self-actualize. And I'm breaking one ground rule, but I'm making some assumption that at least the majority of us here have had some basic needs met where we've been able to self-actualize and have these conversations.
That's a safe
And all of that is economic.
Yeah. I was gonna say, when it comes to mental health, and violence in our communities, black on black crime, why do we not love each other? Sometimes I feel like it's because the act of violence is like a cry for help. You know, like when you talked about your friend, your homeboys and whatnot that you don't hang out with. You know, some people like, and I've seen it because I work with kids. I've worked with middle school, high school students for years, and I see kids that are, they're like this when they first started, right? And then years later, one person is 4.0 GPA, another person is in a gang. And it's just like, I'll talk to each of them. And I'll say, hey man, so what happened? Why y'all not friends anymore? Oh man, nah, they think they better than me now, they whatever, whatnot. Exactly. So sometimes it's like you loving yourself to be that person, like, I can't be here with you guys because, you know, sometimes they don't see it. They look at it like, oh, you hate me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and because you see me, I'm gonna do something. You know what I mean? Sometimes like breaking into that car, and I've seen this so many times, breaking into that car, you know, to get some headphones out of that car, or to get a bag or whatnot. It's almost like a cry for help. Like, man, I need to feel some type of validation, and because I don't have, because I don't see the validation in myself. I need to wear these shoes. I need to have this watch. I need to have this money. I need to do all these things so that I can validate myself, because it's almost like a point of desperation for people. Like they know it's unhealthy. They know it's toxic, but they don't care because they need to feel, you know how you just, man, like I know this is bad, but I'm so hungry. I'm gonna just eat that donut. I'm gonna eat that slice of pizza. Like it's like you just don't care that you're willing to put yourself in danger and risk putting other people in danger just to feel some type of validation. You know what I'm saying?
And we want to validate ourselves because we tend to, once we make it, we gotta let everybody know. So we made
social media now.
We may drive in that neighborhood.
You gonna see
but
this
we make sure we
car.
drive with the best car possible.
You gonna see
even
this
if
car.
we don't stop.
Loud
But we want to be seen as like, hey, I made it. Yo, what's up?
Yes.
And then we drive by.
Right.
Now, but if you build that trust with those same people that would break your window, they might end up being the one that are looking out for you. Because they understand that there's love and trust. Yeah, he made it, but he doesn't make me feel like, sorry about that. He doesn't make me feel like I'm better than, no.
Nah, see, I gotta respond to this, right? So let me respond to this, right?
You got
Well,
25
real quick.
Because you said by pastor, y'all be long with
Nah, so I do try to bring everyone up. I'm not gonna lie to you. I try to bring everyone up. All my dogs, I try to put them in situations for them to win. He can attest to this. Even if I may not agree with what you're doing, I still want you to win. I still want you to do good. You know, some people, many people want you to do good, they just don't want you to do better than them. I don't have a problem if you're doing better than me. I don't, and we recently was having a conversation about this just 2 nights ago. I said, everyone want to be in charge. Everyone want to be, excuse the expression, head nigga in charge.
Yeah.
You feel me? And I told him, I said, it's all right to be number 2 sometimes. I don't have a problem with being number 2. I don't. If you my dog and you win and you number 1, go ahead. I'll be a strong number 2 for you. You feel me? As long as we all win and we all doing good. That was it. I just wanted to respond to that.
Jeff didn't let. I want to bring it back to mental health.
Yeah.
So you got a soldier.
And we can close on that because that's strong.
So a soldier, a veteran that went through a traumatic war, suffers PTSD, and most of these soldiers aren't reporting their PTSD because it's a sign of weakness. And we can see that in the Black community, we are in war. And we're not reporting our trouble and our trauma because we're suffering through PTSD as well, and it's a sign of weakness. So we have to be aware of it, and we got to be self-aware and just say, look, I have that problem. Just like we expect a soldier to say, look, you better tell everybody you have this because we don't want to die one day and you shoot up the place. It's the same thing that a Black man is a ticking time bomb at times, where you don't know what he's going through in his household or at work, and he's suffering through PTSD, and it can affect his value. He values other people. It can affect some other things, and again, we're going back to the root cause, right? So these little things, these 1%ers, we need to tackle them, and I think mental health is key, especially most of the guys that are suffering from PTSD in our respective communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll say something quickly because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, 25 seconds.
I wanted to go back to what you said about it's extremely difficult to change systems. There's a difference between, there's something called a wicked problem versus a tame problem. And a wicked problem is essentially something where there's no obvious solution to it. And a lot of the problems that's facing the Black community, there's no obvious solution, there's no panacea that if you just do this, then everything will get better. At the same time, I do want to go back to the idea that we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
And that while we're trying to change the system, we have to be changing as individuals.
Absolutely.
Because it's difficult to even change your own family, and it's difficult to even change yourself. So what makes you think you're gonna wake up and change the system the next day?
Yeah.
And so we have to see what we can do as individuals. To the point of lifting as you climb. I know it's extremely difficult, especially if you grew up with someone to really lift them up, especially if there's no trust. but the people who you grew up with are not the only people that you could affect change on. Like you could go to your old high school or old middle school and see if you could speak to those kids. You could find someone like you're in IT, you can go to an IT department where kids who are interested in STEM, you could try to train them up on the ways that you did, right? Ezra and Ismail, y'all came to my class before, y'all spoke to my students, right? There's people that we can change and show that there's a better way to live, that there's a life that you can live outside. And I think that's what we should run to. We should run to a better quality of living, and we can be that example of how to live better. We just have to show it to people around us.
Be that example. I love that, man. I love that.
So when it comes to mental health, I want to make sure that we don't forget to include in the conversation the reality of social engineering, right? It's a real thing, you know what I mean? You know, with the right marketing, you can shift the culture any way you want, you know what I mean? I'll give you an example. This is just a live illustration. Everybody just clap with me. We love y'all. Clap, 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 clap. I'm going to see my therapist. I can't wait to see my therapist. I really need my therapist. Cause I am so sick of this. All right, stop. Now, if you heard that all day long, maybe 5, 6, 7 times, you heard it on the bus, you going through something at home, you heard it in the car, you heard it, you know, on TV, whatever, and you kept hearing it over and over, right? Now you're dealing with a mental issue. What you think might start ringing in your head?
I need to see your therapist.
Social engineering. And then guess what becomes popular? Going to see your therapist.
Amen.
Right? This is how it works. It works in the good and the bad. You know what I mean? So if I want to push something positive, it works with the same power. And this is what we don't care enough about. I'm not going to say we don't know, because we know. You know what I mean? It's a reason people still smoke cigarettes, even though it say right on the box,
You're gonna die.
You're gonna die. It's a reason, because it's social engineering makes it okay, makes it popular. If we took that same care and concern for things that's gonna benefit our community and uplift our community, we can make anything a reality in our culture.
Absolutely.
But we just don't care enough. Why? Because the people who have the power to do it are rich. So why should they care? That's not their reality anymore. You know what I mean? They have evolved, they've escaped.
Right.
So they don't care as long as the dollars keep coming, right? So we have to stand up and face these systems that promote negative things to our community and say we don't want to consume this anymore. But we haven't gotten there yet. Our own radio stations are warring against us and we don't even realize it. But we won't stand up against them because it's our people on the air. You get what I'm saying? So they created a way to where we won't even challenge the powers that be because of the faces they use to deceive us.
Jesus.
I got one thing to say.
All right.
I was gonna say one thing within the black household that I noticed too is that it's really pushing for religion and stuff like that. The concept of that we're in God and stuff like that. But one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that we can't just focus on that and don't do anything. Faith without works is nothing. You know what I'm saying? So if we're gonna say that, you know, praise God, we need Him, we also have to go talk about that too, because God called us to go talk to people about that stuff. You feel me? We're disciples, but we also need to talk to each other about stuff like that. You feel me? So that's the important thing. That's on.
I love that.
One thing real quick.
I'll
real quick. I think, you know,
is it HR group?
Nah. It's always HR. But I think one thing I think mental health is vastly important, and we all need therapy. I think the other thing is, we talk about love, but how do you expect, and this is I don't think we asked this question enough, how do you expect someone to love a community that they don't feel loves them back? And you go to certain black communities and they've been divested from, people don't want to live there. So when you walk into a community where no one wants to live, people are walking around angry. I have to live here. I have to see this. And I think that's the piece we don't address. So it's easy for me to commit an act of violence against you or you or you. I'm already mad. and I don't feel like you're a part of this community. This community don't love me. Our love, my experience anyway, my personal experience, many of us, black people, we love our communities and each other with conditions. When the community is good to us and celebrating us, we're good to the community. We love the community. When the community challenges us and questions us and attempts to hold us to a standard, we don't love our community. We don't love the people in that community. So we love with conditions. So for me, I think at least my challenge in terms of for my wife, for my son, for black men, for black people, how do I love without conditions? How do I love this man or this man or this man unconditionally? Because if I can get there, then I can get to not feeling a sense of we walking down the block, it's what's up? I might not know you, but I'm always throwing my hands up and speaking and head nodding or something. As opposed to somebody seeing it like, oh, he,
right. What you looking at?
Looking at me, what you want to do? You know, it doesn't have to be that.
And let me say this, and then we're going to do a quick round, and I want you guys to really ponder upon what are the next steps that you feel we need to take as black men and ensuring that we love one another. I think, Gil, to your point, is that idea about social engineering that Pop talked about. How you had us clap in unity, right? And the repetition of those words. I think for us, we don't repeat love language enough as black men for us all to feel a safe space to be loved. Like that, what you looking at? Why you looking at me, right? As opposed to I'm walking up and I see a brother in the street, yo, what's up, bro? Just a head nod. In your area, in your neighborhood, walking down the street, those little things we discredit all the time. We don't see that it's a part. It's providing a solution to a bigger problem within our community. So that's one. And the second thing was the self-actualization piece, right? If we can social engineer our love language towards each other as black men, one, which means changing the way we interact with each other, and then also think about another brother in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and finding out what the other brother is in need of and supplying that need to the best of your ability, then I think we can start making headway towards that change. So I think social engineering is one aspect of it. And then once we're able to satisfy that brother's need, because bro, I could sit up here and, you know, brother could be like, yo, I'm hungry. All right, man, well, go be well fed. Yo, I'm cold. Yeah, man, go get a jacket, though. But you got a jacket and food and house and you're not helping the other brother.
Speaking scripture, you don't even know.
Right. So social engineering, you know, comes into play, and of course, once we get to that place where we can satisfy each other's needs or help each other towards that need, then we can help brothers get into that place of self-actualization. So, in closing, I want to go around the room and I want to ask each brother, just as short and as simple as you can be in one statement. What do you think are the next steps we need to take as men to love each other, black men to love each other more?
Breaking these bad habits.
Okay.
In order to love each other, we must listen to one another.
I think personally, I need to ask Dr. Shirley for everyone's number, and in the next month, send everybody in here at least a text and say, how you doing, how can I support you?
I love that.
Like that, and just adding we are what we practice.
I would say open and honest communication with us.
I think that we gotta bear our own cross. That's, to me, I think that's one of the best ways for us to really help our community, because loving each other, it sounds easy, but it's hard. Because there's some of us, not us here, but in our community, that will not see our love and reciprocate it. And we have to just continue to do it until it catches on, like what Pop was talking about.
Yeah, you gotta be in the practice of loving yourself.
Love it.
I'll say builders and firefighters. We need to encourage more builders to build and more firefighters to fight fires. Real quick, what I mean is that there's a lot of long-term systemic things that need to change. Those are the builders. It takes a while, right? But in the meantime, we gotta save lives. So we need people that's willing to run into the fire and pull people out right now, not 50 years from now, right now. Somebody mama gonna be crying tomorrow.
Yes.
We need to save that life right now. Not wait for the government or whoever or racist people to stop being racist. Let's save this life right now.
Yes.
I would probably say like, just continue to like push the love. Just like how they say like a smile is infectious. When you smile at somebody and they smile, smile. So it's like we just gotta be in the habit of like, you know, like I removed the ninja from my vocabulary, right? So it's all brother, man. You're my brother. So it's like even if you don't give it back to me,
Good job.
you're
That ain't
still my
easy.
brother. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm gonna say what's up, brother. How you doing, brother? You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you say I'm not your brother, but you know you don't know me like that, whatever. That's cool because I'm still putting it out there. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it didn't work on him, but maybe on the next one he's like, oh yeah, cool, brother. Sometimes we do a little dab, you know, he moves on. And he may see the next brother, he may do the same thing. So just like how a smile can like end up changing somebody's day who's maybe thinking about, you know, doing that ultimate act, right? And if somebody smiled at them and they like, you know what? Maybe life's not that bad. You know what I'm saying? So like,
That's social engineering right there,
Yeah.
bro. 101.
What we need to start doing today, right now, to show each other as black men that we love each other is, first, we have to love ourselves before we can start loving each other. Because if you don't know what love is, how can you love me? And number one is putting your pride aside. It's okay to be friendly. It is. It's okay. You know, that's the most friendliest guy I know. It's okay to walk down the street saying hi to everyone.
Yeah.
It's okay to smile. And that's really it though.
That's what's up.
Going off what he said, you got to know that you love. I think what's important to have is God, to have God in a relationship with every one of us. So if we have a relationship with everyone in this room, God got to be in between that relationship. Our love by ourselves can't sustain ourselves because we're human beings. We're weak without God. You feel me? So with God, think that His love is sustaining. I think that lasts forever, past time. So
I love it. I love it. Closing remarks, brother. I like to close off with this quote before I bring up Dr. Shirley. By Thurgood Marshall, and I mentioned it in the beginning of our talk tonight. He says, when we recognize the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute.
That's real good.
When we recognize the humanity of our fellow beings, when we start recognizing the humanity, the value, the worth of our fellow brothers, it is then that we start paying ourselves the highest tribute. Small change doesn't have to be radical change.
That's a bar.
Atomic habits.
I recognize
It does not have to be radical change. Small change can begin right now. So I want to thank you, brothers, for your transparency, your openness, not assuming, right? But just loving on one another, man. And while we close, man, I just want you to look at the brother to your right and left and just tell him, man, I love you, bro.
I love you, bro.
Hey, no love you, bro. No love, bro. No, I love you, bro. We cool. Yeah, bro. We tight. Enunciate, brothers.
So I first want to say thank you to each one of you who accepted the invitation. Many of you sitting in here, if not all of you, are people that I call on and you answer my call. Are people that not only answer the call, but we go at it back and forth, Brandon and I, when I don't hear from him, when he goes missing. No, but it really is all love. And you were strategically and intentionally and deliberately chosen to be here because we wanted the conversation to continue. More importantly, we want each of you, because we see you as the social engineers for tomorrow. You were in the spaces, so you talked about the social engineer. Literally, you all made this conversation about social engineering. Well, I dare to challenge each and every one of you that is sitting here and everyone who's gonna be watching us to continue to be that social engineer, because change isn't coming without us, y'all. There isn't a caravan that's gonna come do this for us. We're it.
That's it.
And every chance I get, every opportunity I get to give space to men to be able to be seen, to be heard, and to be validated, it is important to me. It is important to the body of work we do, because all you need to look at is the data of these same institutions that we keep talking about. It is our own Black and brown men. So if we don't stand, then who will stand for them? So I thank you for taking the time. I challenge you also to know that this is not the first, it's not the last, and it won't be a yearly thing. So to Gil's point, if we do this once a year and we only leave it at once a year, we have failed.
Yeah.
Not only have we failed each other, but we continue to fail the young men who we need to be social engineers for. So I challenge all of y'all. I know y'all get invitations. I challenge you. Many of you are a part of our conferences. Continue to come, continue to speak, because your voice is needed. Your voice is needed now more than ever, but more importantly, our young black men need to see the representation. They don't have to just see the rapper. They don't have to just see the athlete. They can see y'all sitting in this space and be exactly what it is that they too can become. You can't become what you can't see.
Yep.
That's just the reality to it. So I thank you all. I thank you all for supporting the work of U-Turn. I thank you for believing in the work. More importantly, I thank each and every one of you for carrying the cross of U-Turn with us. We could not do what we do without each and every one of you answering the call. So to the people that are watching, I hope that you learned something. I hope that we inspired you to be a social engineer for change. But more importantly, I hope that we inspired each and every one of you to be a social engineer for love. Love isn't just an emotion. You got to work at it.
Yep.
It takes constant work. It takes overcoming the unconditional stuff. It takes overcoming when you ain't feeling it. It takes overcoming when you ain't getting in return. But if we only deal with love in a sense of emotion, we continue to fail. So it has to be an act, and it has to be a constant and consistent thing that we do. I love each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. I thank you for loving me back, and I hope that we'll see you guys again next time. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.
That was straight HR proof.